After the Capitol Hill incident on January 6th, many are starting to lump in all of the president's supporters with those who rioted and broke into the Capitol building. One America's Jack Posobiec has more.
All right, we're bringing in here Editor-in-Chief of National Pulse, Raheem Kassam. And Raheem, something I wanted to talk to you about that we haven't really discussed on air yet, but you and I were actually both there on the ground walking by the Capitol building when all of this was going on, heard the first flashbangs going off, and I really just wanted to kind of have a discussion of that, what it was like. And now you've gone back and dug into the timeline, and I want to explain that for people who weren't there and haven't got all the details, because the media is really trying to characterize this one way. We were there, let's talk about what happened.
I think it's been so shocking since Wednesday that actually you and I even sort of forgot the fact that we were walking from the Supreme Court effectively and walked down Constitution Avenue towards the offices, towards the studios here. And the really interesting thing about it was we were actually walking at the very same time that the Washington Post, the NPR, all of these guys' timelines suggest that there was a major riot taking place inside the Capitol building. So I went back and I looked at the timeline as they've laid it out, and sure enough, we were there at the same time. So the pictures that people see on their screens of all of this, raucous behavior and aggression and violence and smashing that you see outside the Capitol, we were no more than 100 yards away from it. And to us at the time even, that wasn't clear what was going on. Yes, you could hear some sirens, there was something going on at Union Station, and yes, you heard some loud bangs, which to me sounded like a firework or something similar. But it wasn't very clear. And remember, I've been in war zones before. I've been, in Kiev when the government has been being overthrown by violent activists, and it was nothing like that. There weren't people running around screaming. There weren't bullhorns. There wasn't a lot of megaphones and speakerphones of police telling people to disperse. The two of us actually just walked calmly and quietly in amongst a crowd down Capitol Hill. So you go back and you look at that timeline and you figure, okay, so what exactly happened here? And what happened here was that a very small crowd, a very trouble-making crowd that saw the necessity, that for them it was a necessity to be right at the doors of the Capitol building before the president had even gone up on stage, let alone before he had finished his speech. They decided to tarnish hundreds of thousands of people who were protesting peacefully by going there early in advance of the president's speech and causing mayhem on the ground. And
now, I want to drill down on that actually before you go past it, because I think that's really important. So you're saying that based on the timeline from what we know, that even prior to when you and I walked by around 1 o'clock, maybe 1:10, but there were people who had already been there, probably couldn't have attended the president's speech, and that were pre-planning to commit this activity regardless of what the president said.
Okay, so without a teleportation device, it is impossible for somebody to have been at the president's speech and then at the Capitol. Here's the timeline, and people can go away and look this up for themselves. The president got up to speak at noon on the dot and did not finish speaking until 1:11 p.m. Eastern Time. He exited the stage at 1:13 p.m. Eastern Time. Steve Sund, who's the resigned head of the Capitol Police, said that the first protesters arrived at 12:40 p.m. and within 15 minutes of that, his outer perimeter, the bike racks effectively were breached. So 12:55 p.m. The first people breached the thing. 45 minutes is how long it takes to go, and remember the streets are closed. You can't take a car, so you have to walk from the White House to the Capitol, which puts the first people who were able to listen to the president's speech at the Capitol at about 1:56 p.m. That's a full hour and 16 minutes after Steve Sund says the first people were at the perimeter at the Capitol building.
Right, so the timeline doesn't work. The people who were listening to the president and the fact that, by the way, and we should also mention, how was cell phone service that day?
Impossible. Impossible. Could barely get any, could certainly not live stream the president's speech while you were standing outside and get incited that way.
Because I've seen people say, oh, well, maybe they were listening to the president's speech.
Yeah, that's exactly what you do while you're smashing down windows and causing havoc outside the US Capitol, is you have a speech on your phone in front of you while you're doing it.
It really wasn't possible.
It doesn't make sense. It's a total nonsense. And so what we have to do is treat these two events as completely separate events. You had troublemakers, and I couldn't care less who they politically support. You condemn them nonetheless. They were there to cause trouble, and they did not attend President Trump's speech. Here's why it's important. The Democrats are now trying to impeach this president, again, using the words from his speech and saying that his speech incited people to violence. I will repeat this again. You could not have listened to the president's speech and made it over to the Capitol in time for that timeline to work.
There were clearly agitators in there, and our investigation is continuing to bear that out. Let me ask you a final question. Why is the fight over the characterization of this event so important right now?
The way this is characterized now is going to be used for the long term in the future, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, to malign people, to make sure they can't get jobs, to make sure that they can't be in public life, can't take public office. What they see right now is the ability in this very small period of time immediately after these events that we all condemn. They see the opportunity to lump the responsibility all onto one side and make sure that the conservatives for the foreseeable future cannot exercise any moral leadership over this country. That's what they see, that's the goal, and it is every single person's responsibility right now not to sit back and take it, but to actually stand up, speak up, and make the evidence and the facts known so that the rest of the country, and by the way, you look at the polling over the course of the weekend, people are not buying the Democrat narrative, so it's time to redouble the efforts for facts, not opinion.
Raheem, where can people follow you and get access to your writings?
At thenationalpulse.com.
All right. Thank you so much.
Cheers.